You're watching All24 News World News Program. Next up are the headlines. Talks between Tehran and Washington start soon in Islamabad. Trump says he's got a fair deal and threatens destruction if Iran says no, but Tehran refuses to come and sticks to its nuclear rights. The ceasefire in Lebanon isn't holding. The Zionist occupation keeps breaking it, so displaced people are scared to return. Turkey is now warning the occupation against imposing a new reality there. Algeria raises the bar in energy. It's launching a bidding round for 7 new oil and gas fields. The country is telling international investors it's open and reliable no matter how difficult things get. First up in our news tonight, moments before the start of the match between US Madalji and Olympic Safi, fans stormed the pitch and attacked US Madalji fans and players during a CAF semi-final in Morocco. Olympic Safi supporters used gas and iron bars against the Algerian club fans. They also chanted political slogans in blatant violation of CAF rules. US Madalji players were forced to retreat and wait for the situation to calm down. Meanwhile, US Madalji official Haj Adlan called the attacks brutal. He said everything was planned from the start and that fans suffered brutal attacks. Adlan added that players, himself included, faced cowardly attacks. He also questioned how the small Olympic Safi Stadium was considered fit for a CAF semi-final. The match kicked off late after a draw in the first leg in Algeria. With just days before the ceasefire deadline expires, diplomatic efforts to end the Iran-US war are intensifying as both sides prepare for a new round of talks or high-stakes talks in Pakistan amid deep mistrust and rising threats. Zarvajan reports.
The United States and Iran are set to begin a second round of direct negotiations this Tuesday in Islamabad in a renewed attempt to reach a final agreement and end the war in the Middle East, just one day before the ceasefire deadline. U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed that his special envoy Steve Witkoff, along with Jared Kushner, will attend the talks. In media statements, Trump said the deal with Iran will happen one way or another, whether peacefully or the hard way, accusing Tehran of committing a serious violation of the ceasefire while still expressing confidence in reaching an agreement. However, uncertainty surrounds Iran's participation. Iranian media reports indicate that Tehran has yet to make a final decision on attending the talks, citing an unfavorable atmosphere. Sources say lifting the U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports remains a key precondition for negotiations. Other reports point to what Iran views as unrealistic American demands, casting doubts on the prospects for meaningful progress. Meanwhile, Trump announced what he described as a fair and reasonable deal, while simultaneously escalating his rhetoric. In a post on Truth Social, he accused Iran of violating the ceasefire in the Strait of Hormuz and warned that the failure to reach an agreement could lead to devastating consequences.
Iran decided to fire bullets yesterday in the Strait of Hormuz, a total violation of our ceasefire agreement. My representatives are going to Islamabad, Pakistan. They will be there tomorrow evening for negotiations. Iran recently announced that they were closing the strait, were offering a very fair and reasonable deal, and I hope they take it, because if they don't, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant and every single bridge in Iran.
On the Iranian side, Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf acknowledged some progress in negotiations but stressed that major gaps remain.
تنگه هست We are still from a final agreement. We have made progress in the negotiations, but there are still major gaps and some key issues remain unresolved. We have no trust in the United States. The United States must decide to earn the trust of the Iranian people. They must abandon unilateralism and their approach of imposing dictates. If we accepted the ceasefire, it is because they accepted our demands.
As tensions persist and positions remain far apart, the upcoming talks in Islamabad could prove decisive in determining whether diplomacy prevails or the war escalates further.
Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian reaffirmed Iran's commitment to what he described as its nuclear rights. Speaking on Sunday, he said neither U.S. President Donald Trump nor anyone else had the authority to deny Iran these rights. He added that Iran was not seeking escalation but responding in self-defense.
Trump says that Iran cannot exercise its nuclear rights, but he does not explain why. Who is he to deprive a country of its rights? Iran is not seeking to expand the war and did not initiate any conflict, nor will it do so. We have not attacked any country and have no intention of attacking any party. We're only defending ourselves in a legitimate manner.
Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps issued a warning to ships in the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, ordering them not to change position and threatening to target any vessel that violated its directives. In a statement, he said any ship approaching the Strait of Hormuz would be treated as an ally of the United States. It also urged vessels to rely exclusively on official Iranian naval guidance and disregard statements attributed to U.S. President Donald Trump. Shipping traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has come to a complete stop. CNN reports that most ships in the area have moved toward the Gulf. This comes after Tehran regained control of the strait just hours after announcing a resumption of traffic. Iran cited what it called Washington's violation of the ceasefire agreement and a blockade on Iranian ports. Tehran said on Sunday that a U.S. naval blockade of its ports breached the ceasefire in place between the two sides for more than a week. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai wrote on X platform that the U.S. action, as described, violated the Pakistan broker truce and amounted to what he called an illegal and criminal measure. He also accused Washington of imposing collective punishment on the Iranian population, calling it a war crime and a crime against humanity.
The United States' so-called blockade of Iran's ports or coastline is not only a violation of the ceasefire mediated by Pakistan, but also an unlawful and criminal act. It violates Article 2.4 of the United Nations Charter and constitutes an act of aggression under Article 3.c of the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 3314. 1974, which explicitly lists the blockade of a country's ports or coastline as such an act. Moreover, the deliberate imposition of collective punishment on the Iranian people amounts to a war crime and a crime against humanity.
Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf said Iran's armed forces remain on full combat alert despite ongoing negotiations with the United States. In an interview with Press TV, he pointed to the continued disagreements between Tehran and Washington over the nuclear file and the Strait of Hormuz. He added that Iran's willingness to pursue lasting peace depended on guarantees that the United States or the Zionist occupation would not initiate further military action.
خب اگر اینجا تنگه هست
In any case, the ceasefire was established here, but it was incomplete, as I have already explained clearly. What does that mean? It means that if you do not enforce the ceasefire, then we do not observe the ceasefire at all. Start the war and hold the negotiations. Both actions together will stop negotiations and will start the war. They have only partially observed the ceasefire in a half-hearted manner.
Turkey has expressed optimism that the two-week ceasefire between Iran and the United States could be extended between its expiry on Wednesday. Speaking at the closing of the Antalya Diplomacy Forum, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan said both sides appeared willing to continue negotiations aimed at ending the conflict.
Regime change. Görüşmelerde kritik bir aşamaya gelindi.
The negotiations have reached a critical stage. What is good is that both sides are continuing the talks with serious intentions and sincerity. They have the will to continue, not only the parties involved, but the whole world is frankly relieved by the current ceasefire.
Several towns in southern Lebanon came under the Israeli occupation artillery fire and airstrikes on Sunday in another breach of the ceasefire agreement. Local media footage showed warplanes flying overhead, alongside heavy bombardment and the destruction of buildings in villages and towns across the entire district. Separately, areas in the Nabatiya district were also shelled, with flares fired into the sky. Many displaced families in Lebanon chose to delay their return home, fearing the truce could collapse and expressing mistrust in the occupation's commitments to the ceasefire. Kermistwa has more.
The 10-day ceasefire between the Zionist entity and Lebanon has given displaced Lebanese a brief chance to check what remains of their homes. One of them is Dareen, who came back to her apartment severely damaged by a Zionist airstrike. The broken glass on the floor is a small glimpse of the wider destruction across the Nabatiya region in southern Lebanon, where entire neighborhoods have been heavily hit.
We were sitting, suddenly we felt nothing but like a hurricane hitting our home. Everything fell on us, the glass, the stuff in the house. Definitely the first thing I thought about is the children, that nothing happens to them. I didn't have the time to clean up. We have been removing broken glass and debris, but definitely we shall continue.
Like many returning residents, Dareen's return is marked by relief but also uncertainty, as she isn't sure how long the ceasefire will hold.
I'm now packing, but I don't think I will possibly flee. But just in case something happens, I could possibly leave. But for now, I'm removing the stuff that were in the bag, and I will stay here despite everything.
US President Donald Trump declared that Washington has ordered the Zionist entity to halt its bombing campaign in Lebanon. For many residents, this long-awaited announcement has sparked cautious optimism that the Zionist aggression, which has displaced over 1 million people, could be edging toward a more lasting pause.
Turkey's foreign minister says the Zionist occupation is trying to force a new reality on Lebanon despite the ceasefire agreement. A confidant spoke at the Antalya Diplomacy Forum on Sunday. He said the occupation is exploiting the world's focus on Iran-US negotiations to impose a fait accompli in Lebanon and continue its genocide in Gaza in different forms. And speaking of Gaza, a young Palestinian man was killed Sunday by the Israeli occupation fire in Halawa refugee camp in Jabalia, northern part of the Strip, after sustaining fatal head injuries. According to Wafa, citing a Shifa hospital sources, another man was killed Saturday evening by Zionist military vehicles northwest of Rafah, southern Gaza. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said Spain will call on the European Union on Tuesday to suspend its partnership agreement with the occupying Israel, citing violations of international law. Speaking at a rally in Andalusia, he said the move would be coordinated with Ireland and Slovenia in a joint initiative to be submitted to the European Commission. Moving on to another news story. Algeria launched its 2026 Algeria bid round on Sunday, opening 7 hydrocarbon exploration blocks in a move aimed at boosting investment and accelerating exploration. The National Agency for the Valorization of Hydrocarbon Resources and Neft said the round includes 7 blocks, up from 5 in the previous edition, reflecting efforts to expand opportunities and attract international partners. Neft Chief Samir Bakhti said the initiative positions Algeria strategically in a global energy landscape marked by uncertainty and rising competition.
This moment is not merely another step in our calendar. It represents a strategic positioning for my country, a clarification of our approach, and above all, a firm projection into the future. In a global energy environment marked by uncertainty, increasing competition between jurisdictions, and ever higher performance expectation, We are making a deliberate choice, the choice of stability, clarity, and reliability.
Bakhti said the new tender round sends a clear message to international investors that Algeria is open to investment and seeking long-term partnerships in stable conditions that are becoming increasingly rare.
We are at a decisive moment. High-quality opportunities in stable environment are becoming increasingly rare. The decision made today will shape the decades to come. The Algeria bid round 2026 represent an opportunity for all of us, an opportunity to invest, to develop, and to build together.
Algerian Minister of State and Minister of Hydrocarbons Mohamed Arqab reaffirmed Algeria's commitment to remaining a reliable energy partner, ensuring stable and consistent supplies even in difficult conditions. At the launch of the Algeria Bid Round 2026 at the International Conference Center in Algiers, he underlined Algeria's role as a trusted energy hub, citing its strategic position near Europe and its aim to secure steady flows to global markets.
Algeria is establishing itself as a leading energy destination and a reliable partner, working to ensure a secure and sustainable flow of supply to global markets. It actively contributes to the stability of energy markets thanks to its strategic proximity to Europe, the abundance of its natural resources, and its advanced transport and export infrastructure. As a committed partner, Algeria guarantees stable and consistent supplies, even in the most complex contexts. It also boasts significant capabilities in energy provision, particularly electricity generated from renewable sources, as well as the availability of industrial equipment related to the hydrocarbon sector. This equipment, produced locally by Algerian public and private companies, meets international standards. Finally, Algeria benefits from a highly qualified human capital specialized in the oil and gas industry.
Arqab renewed Algeria's commitment to strengthening its role as a regional energy hub through major strategic infrastructure projects, including the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline.
The Algeria Round Bid 2026 represents a genuine opportunity to strengthen global energy security. In this context, we are working to solidify Algeria's position as a regional energy hub by developing major strategic infrastructure projects, such as the Trans-Sahara gas pipeline (PSGP), which will open new horizons for energy integration.
Algeria's non-hydrocarbon exports rose by 16% in the first quarter of the year compared with the same period in 2025. Speaking to Algerian radio, Abdulatif Louari, Essential Director at the Ministry of Foreign Trade and Export Promotion, said Algerian products had entered new markets. He also announced preparations for a digital one-stop shop for exporters, alongside the expected launch of the Algerian Export Authority in the coming days. President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, said the Algiers-Tamghast railway line will be operational by the end of 2028. Chairing a cabinet meeting on Sunday, he urged the government to prioritize the project, describing it as a major national undertaking on par with the Garj Bilad development. He also announced that phosphate exports from Al-Hadba will begin by the end of March 2027, following completion of the eastern mining line linking Al-Hadba with Al-Kibrit and Annaba. Tebboune ordered the immediate launch of processing, storage, and port-related infrastructure, while tasking the mining sector with advancing toward full export capacity. In parallel, he called for a new water management plan aimed at strengthening long-term water security and improving emergency response within the sector. Parties represented in the Norwegian parliament have called for an end to the Moroccan occupation of Western Sahara, following the creation of parliamentary friendship group with Western Sahara. Lawmakers reaffirmed Norway's commitment to international law and its support for the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination. According to the Sahrawi news agency, the initiative was backed by 22 MPs from 9 parties, highlighting sustained political attention to the issue within the legislature. Once alive with music and crowds, Havana streets now fall silent after sunset as Cuba's worsening energy crisis dims nightlife, threatens livelihoods, and heightens fears over safety and economic stability. Yasin reports now.
In the streets around the Capitolio, once the beating heart of Havana's nightlife, only a few residents now gather after sunset. Some dance on dimly lit sidewalks, clinging to a fading tradition, but much of the city falls quiet and dark. Outside a handful of streets and establishments that remain cautiously open, Havana is largely deserted at night. Even without constant blackouts, limited electricity has forced businesses to scale back operations. A small number of tourists, mostly Russians, still frequent certain venues, but their presence is not enough to sustain the city's struggling nightlife.
Everything is closed. There's nothing here that can give the Cuban people hope. There's nothing left. When I see the empty streets, I feel empty too. I can't feel happy when everything in my country is so sad.
The decline reflects a broader energy crisis that has intensified in recent months. Shortages have disrupted daily life and hit the hospitality sector particularly hard, threatening jobs in hotels, restaurants, and entertainment venues.
Tomorrow I might feel discouraged and say I'm going to give it all up. But deep down I know I won't, because this is a dream I've achieved. I have so many ideas. We Cubans have something beautiful. In times of crisis, we reinvent ourselves.
Cuba's economic difficulties have been exacerbated by tighter United States sanctions, including an oil embargo imposed by President Donald Trump. These measures have deepened an already fragile economy shaped by decades of restrictions.
Before the situation we are facing now, you could sit in the park in Havana, you could walk the street. I used to go to the 23rd Street and stay at Capitolio until dawn. It felt safe. Security was better back then.
Residents say the growing darkness is not only symbolic of economic hardship, but also raises safety concerns. Experts warn that if this situation continues, Cuba risks sliding further into humanitarian crisis as energy shortages compound existing social and economic pressures.
Now let's catch up on more international news stories in the News in Brief with Sofian Kantour this time.
The African Union Commission has expressed deep concern, strongly condemning Zionist entity's decision to appoint a diplomatic convoy to the self-declared region Somaliland. In a statement, the Commission reaffirmed its position of not recognizing Somaliland as an independent entity, stressing the need to respect the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of Somalia, in line with the Constitutive Act of the African Union and international law. Russia's Prosecutor General's office has accused the Ukrainian government of committing what it described as genocide against civilians in the Donbas region since 2024. According to Russian authorities, the alleged actions have resulted in more than 5,000 deaths and around 30,000 injuries among the local population. The Director General of the International Air Transport Association, Willie Walsh, has warned that flight cancellations across Europe could begin by the end of May due to the potential shortage of jet fuel. In a statement, Walsh said an assessment by the International Energy Agency indicating that aviation fuel supplies in Europe could start running out within 6 weeks is a matter of serious concern. More than 55 films representing over 20 countries will take part in the official competition of the 6th edition of Annaba Mediterranean Film Festival. The event is scheduled to run from April 24 to 30 in Annaba, bringing together a diverse selection of productions from across the Mediterranean region.
Against all odds, US made Algeria through to the CAF Confederation Cup final, overcoming a night of chaos in Safi. Their clash with the Olympic Safi was delayed by over an hour after pitch invasions and violent scenes forced players off the field. US made Algeria officials called the attacks brutal and premeditated, raising serious security concerns. But when the play resumed, the Algerian side stayed composed, turning pressure into qualification. From disorder to victory, US Madalji march on. And that's the end of our news program. Thank you for tuning in. Good night.